All right, second day of build, and this is the last session of the night here. So, all right, everybody excited? Woo! All right, love that. All right, cool. Just a couple of things. So this is a hybrid event, so we do have people joining us virtually, as well as you see around y'all, people in person. So if y'all do get a chance, if you do have questions, you want to take polls, go ahead and scan the QR codes to the sides of the room here. And then go ahead and post your questions in there. We also do have the expert meetup zone up on level 5. Just to let y'all know, it's probably going to be closing around like 7, I think is the last one. But definitely check out if you all have time. But if not, you also have till tomorrow. So with that, and let's go ahead and jump in. So
thank you. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Filisha, and I am the product lead on Copilot in Visual Studio, and I'm super excited that you are joining us at 6 p.m. today. We must be truly special.
Yeah. I'm Damian Brady. I am a developer advocate over on GitHub, so I talk about Copilot a lot.
And we're super excited to bring to you all the goodness that GitHub Copilot has and how it integrates deeply and meaningfully into your very beloved Visual Studio IDE. So let's get started.
Yeah. So I might start, for those of you who are a little bit unfamiliar with Copilot, I'll give you a little bit of a history. I stole this slide immediately from my boss who spoke beforehand. But in fairness, he did say his was the last session and everybody left. So he can live with that. So we originally launched GitHub Copilot in 2021 as kind of a preview, and then 2022 is when it went GA. We've seen huge growth in it. It's got about 1.8 million subscriptions for Copilot at the moment, which is massive. It's growing 35% quarter over quarter. Huge growth in that product. And so people have found that it generally increases, it increases productivity, but more importantly, it increases developer happiness. So how happy you are in your jobs. And I can completely relate to that. All of the frustrations of jumping over to Stack Overflow or Google to work out what's going on, you can kind of stay in the flow in your editor, which is a really important thing. Now, I'm just gonna put up this slide just to give you an example of, like, we've seen a lot of stuff on Copilots at Build so far. And the interpretation, I think, with a lot of the Copilots is, oh, great, you just get a prompt and you feed it to a large language model and then get the responses out. This is the simplified data flow of GitHub Copilot. And you can see that there is a lot involved that has been built up over years now of experimentation and just making sure that we're getting the product to the point where it's actually helping you. So the team works really hard on this. We've got the extensibility framework, or GitHub Copilot extensions, that got announced here as well. And so there's a lot to this. It's a very mature product, the most mature AI dev tool that exists, definitely the most highly used. So with all of this power, this is great, and it appears in a lot of places, we'll show you in a sec, but with all of this power, it really kind of works the best when you're in your editor writing code. Now, I work at GitHub. I use a Mac, and I'm DevRel, so I don't actually write real code, but I write Python, and I write Ruby a little bit, and I write TypeScript and JavaScript, but I used to be a C# dev, and I used to use Visual Studio all the time, and I haven't actually used Visual Studio a lot, so I don't know why they invited me to do this talk.
It's because I like to.
Yeah, thank you. Who doesn't? Wow, that's on camera now. So I thought I would ask Filisha to show me all of the integration points with Visual Studio. So I'm used to Visual Studio Code, but Visual Studio is like a super powerful IDE. And so I kind of want to know where those integration points are. And you showed me a bunch of stuff, but I'm going to make you show me again in front of everybody else. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And with all the cool .NET Aspire stuff happening, all the stuff David Fowler's been in the news, so it sort of makes sense. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Damian. Visual Studio is such a powerful IDE, and what makes Copilot really do wonders is our approach to how we've integrated Copilot inside Visual Studio. Now, we've released the newest 17.10 GA version of VS, so go update it. And in that, you will see that Copilot comes in box. So it now comes as a recommended component to you. And this recommended component, when you install VS, will just voila work. it'll show up as a badge in the top right corner, and it combines Copilot chat and Copilot completions. Now, these used to be separate extensions, and we combine that into one unified experience. And yeah, we had heard feedback in the past that getting started with GitHub, the Copilot subscription was sometimes challenging to know if you were logged in or not. So this badge sort of gives you a nice place to manage your subscription. And as always, we are super mindful of the fact that AI is a productivity gain. And if you don't want to use Copilot, you can always go and hide the badge if necessary. So while we meaningfully integrate this into your flow, we always give you the option to decide what you want to do with it. Anyway, I wanted to, with that spiel out of the way, I wanted to tell you, so you must have seen completions, right? You must have seen the magic that it is. So I wanted to start us off with that, and just kick us off with, I have a eShop web app, the one we've been demoing all over Build, and there's a catalog item test class, and I'm just going to try and see if completion. Oh, it's very happy today. It started giving me a lot of completions automatically, but I wanted to sort of see if it would suggest more coverage of tests for my code, and it did. So, I was trying to write a test method, and in the flow, it suggested, hey, maybe try to think if there's an invalid ID. I don't think, maybe you've not written a test for that. And previously, we only had the option to accept this completion.
Yeah.
What you see today is now we have a way to refine the suggestion. And that is our combination between our completions to inline chat flow. So oftentimes, you'll get a completion and be like, I kind of like part of this, but I don't love all of it. I wish I could modify some of it, or maybe provide Copilot with some additional context. Hey, can you also look at this? You kind of got it partly right.
Yeah.
But didn't have the ability to do that. But today, we have now added this flow. So I can accept this completion in some ways, but pull up this inline view with this inline chat box that will say, okay, I kind of like what you've given me, but how about I refine this? So I might say, hey, can you add a test? And I can actually use tests here as a / command to just specify my intent. Write a test in addition to the one you gave me for if the response is no. And this is just the demo stuff, but you can't see here. Okay. And what Copilot should do is actually just keep the existing thing that it gave me, but also give me another test. Yeah, so it gave me the returns bad request given invalid ID test, but then it also kept that and gave me a new test on top of it. So I was able to really refine what it gave me, not exit out of it, and provided additional intents.
Yeah, so much more of a two-way conversation. It's giving you something and you're saying, that's great, but here's another suggestion, and working with it. Instead of just, a lot of the time with these Copilots, you end up with a, give me this, and it says, here you go, and you can either say yes or no.
Yes, and most importantly, it connected completions to chat.
Yeah.
So it went from prompting you in your flow to now being able to, interact with it in natural language.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
That's super exciting. So now that I've showed you this flow, I wanted to get into some of the Git changes and Git repo management stuff that we have in VS. Have you kept up with that? Do you know what we're doing there?
With the Git repo stuff? No, not really. I've seen you did the alt/, is that? Yep. So alt/, I'm used to, is it Control-I or something in Visual Studio Code? So alt/, that's good. The Git stuff, I don't know where that lives.
Yeah. Well, somebody like you wouldn't. I mean just the fact that you're new to Visual Studio.
Yeah, sure.
But we have a really dandy good feature, and for something exactly like this. Let's say I want to search for a feature or the best perhaps way to do something in Visual Studio, but I don't know how, okay? Yeah. Usually what you're gonna do is you're gonna go on Stack Overflow, you're gonna go hit the internet and be like, oh, how do I do X, Y, Z? Yep. Now we have the ability to do that with natural language search in VS. So I can say, where do, I manage my Git repo? Well, it did a pretty good job over there, but if I could ask Copilot that, it's going to perhaps give you the latest and the best place to go do the thing that you intend to do. So you're searching the way I would ask you, hey, what's the best place to go do something? And over here you see Copilot actually asks the VS agent, which is privy to all the features and the latest and greatest in VS, and it can give you the best suggestion over here. So over here it tells me, go to view menu, Git repository. And I do know this is like a new, more new or updated feature that we're working on.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it gives me a good place to get started.
Which is good, and it's that agent model of like, it knows about Visual Studio, but we're doing demos and you've been insulting me for a little while. So you knew that was gonna happen.
Yeah.
Can you ask something else? Ask like an obscure, I don't know, what's an obscure? I remember when I did Visual Studio, there was an extension that I needed to install to like color the tabs.
Oh.
That's built in, right?
Let's ask,
where's that?
How do I change the color of my document tabs? Let's see what Visual Studio does. I think it's going to do well. You know, I believe in it. Yes, I think so. Okay, tab colorization.
Right.
It tells me all the things that I can do with that. Oh, and it sends me how I can set that in the regex. Okay, great. So AVS, I think, is going to come in very handy when you get back into C# dev.
All right.
Cool. So I think I'm going to go back to what it told me about the
Git stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry
By
to
the way,
derail
did you notice that it very neatly segregated my different searches in these threads, so that I could like do the topic-based segmentation, so I could keep my history and my topics very clean.
Without having to kind of reset the chat every time and all that sort of stuff.
And you're obviously able to do that. You can create new threads, but it automatically does that also.
Nice.
So I'm going to go back to this Git repository that it told me is a good place to look at my Git repo. And here you see, you know, I have this eShop repo, and I'm able to look at all the things that have happened in this repo. You know, this is managed by a ton of people. It's an open source repo, so I don't always know what's going on. I use it often to test things and for demos and for build. So I don't always know what a commit is doing, and people are not super great about their commit descriptions, as is want to happen.
Yep.
So we have a really cool new feature now where I can actually go to a commit that looks kind of strange or interesting. For example, this fixed multiple DB context registration. And VS actually, you know, you're able to see the side-by-side view here. You're able to see the message that the developer wrote here. And, you know, this one honestly is not even that bad. Oops, let me go back to this. This one honestly isn't even that bad. You know, they even said, hi, I noticed this issue and I fixed it. But what exactly did they do? And wouldn't it be nice if Copilot could help me with that? Over here, you have Copilot generating an explanation for you. And I'm gonna, you know, just click that to see if it can probably look at the changes and the impact it had and give me a better explanation of what happened in this commit.
So this isn't just reading the commit messages or anything like that. It's looking at the changes and summarizing what those changes were.
Yeah, absolutely. So here you see it says that they updated something and they added like this link query to identify things, and they implemented a loop to do what exactly. And most importantly, it gives you an explanation of this change facilitates easier creation, destruction, isolation of integration test.
Nice.
So it didn't just gurgle out something that was mechanical, but it tried to explain what happened.
That's pretty cool. All right, so all right, we've refactored the code, or they've refactored the code there, right? So what's really cool about this is that it's reading what the code did, and like we know that most of the work that developers do isn't writing code. It's kind of understanding what's happening. So if you're jumping into a code base and you're like, this thing happened, you can find that in the tree of all of the Git changes, and then ask it to explain what that change actually meant, which kind of helps you understand what you're working with.
It gives you a running start.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, so
cool.
Now, you know, in preparation for this demo, one of my friends, Sham, was like, hey, let's add some sales tax to this eShop. And I said, brilliant, people love taxes.
Yeah.
So we implemented a very simple sales tax calculator, except it's kind of not great because it's synchronous. And I know that the API requirement for here is to make it async. Often happens, convert things from sync to async. So I'm going to take Copilot's assistance and convert this into an async method.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is pull up inline chat, which I can always do with alt/, and say, hey, by the way, can you make this async? So I'm going to say make this. By the way, instead of this, I can always use a pound key and pull up any specific selection that I want or any other context. I don't need this here. I'm already in the file, but I'm just demonstrating that one's able to do that, especially when you're in chat.
And you can pull up other files, right?
You could pull up other files as well. So make this selection async. And I'm going to see what Copilot does. It's a fairly simple task, right? Like it's changing the type here and like changing the signature name and like it's just updating what it needs to update. But again, I think this needs a cancellation token that it needs to pass a cancellation token because it's waiting for input output. So I'm going to, again, refine this and say, can you add a And Copilot actually does a great job here. It just adds a cancellation token variable and updates that in the requisite places. And it just made my task of making this very trivial.
That's awesome.
But guess what?
Yeah.
It's not fully there, right? Because while it was able to convert async, it wasn't smart enough to know that this is not actually the correct.
Right, so you still have to stay in control, like you're the pilot, right?
Yeah.
It's the co-pilot, so it's helping you out with some of this stuff, but you still need to.
I still need to do an overview, and I still need to make sure that while it gets me 80% over there, I still need to be the developer.
Yeah.
It's my co-pilot, not the pilot.
Exactly.
But obviously I converted this into async, and it's going to have a ton of errors, which I'm not excited for, especially in the tests probably, because they're all the synchronous tests. So let me see if...
Maybe do a build, but like you've made all those changes, that makes sense. If you get errors, by the way, this is async now, so I have no idea what's going on. But anytime you make those changes in a huge repo, there's going to be a bunch of errors that you need to fix at the same time. Yeah,
it gives me a lot of joy to see these errors because I now have a sneaky new way of getting help with these errors, right? So as suspected, these errors are coming from the tests that I had, and obviously I need to make them async. And while it's not a super hard thing to go do, it's something that I can perhaps use Copilot to kind of reduce my cumbersome work. So wouldn't it be great if this is the same type of thing I need to do, if I could select all of them and get Copilot to apply these fixes at the same time? Do you think it'll do that?
I mean, we did rehearse this, so I hope so.
Okay. That's fair. So I'm going to select the errors that I have here, and I think I got all of them. And I'm going to right click. Oh, I probably should hold it down. I'm going to select them. Did I get all of them? This one. Okay. And then I'm going to right click and ask Copilot to fix these errors. Now you see Copilot automatically knew what to do.
Yeah.
It passed the error context. It gave all the signatures of the requisite places of where the error is happening. And it's actually able to understand what happened, right? Because it said, the method you're trying to call, this object doesn't exist because now you converted into an asynchronous method. So to fix this, you should really change
all of those.
All of that.
So just in case you missed this, she selected multiple errors and basically just said, hey, Copilot, fix my stuff for me. Like not one at a time, but like a lot at the same time.
5 at the same time.
Yeah.
And now Copilot's given me a suggestion, which I'm going to preview. And as you can see, it's doing the right thing, right? It's just making them all async.
Across all of them. That's
across all of them.
Yep.
And I'm going to accept that. And that's neat.
And everything's fixed. And yeah, so like the code's fixed, right? But you really don't know if the code's going to work properly until you run the thing, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, sometimes it's not super hard. Like I knew the change I was making and I fixed it. It was directly related to the change I made. But if I were to pull up the tests over here, the test explorer, and because I just did the build, let me pull this up. You know, there's a bunch of other broken tests here, which perhaps are not related to the things that I have been, you know, just made the changes. And honestly, I get stumped when something I do affects parts of the code that I have no idea of. And the debugger really comes in super handy in these situations, right? Because it's like walking me through where the potential problem is. So I had a little trick up my sleeve.
Okay.
I wanted to show you some really cool new thing that one of my friends, John, is working on. They're like hot bits. And we were trying to figure out, hey, you know, it's all good if you can understand what the problem is, but it would be great if Copilot could guide you through like a session of a debugging session when a test failed.
Which is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. So I'm going to bring up John. John, are you
Let's switch.
around?
We've got somebody on the line.
All right, John, thank you for joining us. We're super excited to see the cool new things you've been working on.
Yeah, so you're right. You're exactly right about coming into tests that you don't know much about. And so we've added a couple of things to help us kind of get into the flow of figuring out test problems. So notice, first of all, in this, we do have a bunch of failed tests here, but for each of these failed tests, we have an extra menu item here in our summary that we can get some help from Copilot. So any one of these, we could ask it to explain the failure, which is a feature that's already out in 1710. But we're currently working on something that's a little bit more high-powered than that, and that's this debug with Copilot feature. I'll kick this off, but I wanted to kind of give you a heads up on what's going to happen, because a lot of things might happen quickly, and we'll have to go back and look at them. But what we're going to do is we're going to ask Copilot to give us a strategy for diagnosing this test. And Copilot's going to recommend some breakpoints. It's going to recommend values that we check as we go along. And we're going to watch what happens here. So as I said, let's scroll back a little bit here. So we started up this debugging process. We got our plan back here in our chat, instructing us on what to change. And we've also, this debugging session is basically started without us doing anything. It tells us right here, it's starting the debugging session. It tells us here that we're using code references. A lot of things are going on here. But the first time we hit a breakpoint that Copilot set for us, that's kind of the important thing, is Copilot told us where to put breakpoints. And then we're also seeing values displayed for us in line for this pass through the code. Now, notice over here, we sent those values automatically back to the chat once we hit this breakpoint. And Copilot has also looked at those values and said, well, this really isn't causing the problem, so continue debugging. So let's go ahead and hit F5 or continue. It's going to go through again. Hopefully I hit that. Let me try again. There we go. So at this point, we get through to our next breakpoint. We find out, it tells us again, continue. We ultimately continue until it will come back and tell us, hopefully, a code fix. This kind, it didn't really give us, it gave us a suggestion early on. If we don't like it, we can ask for other suggestions. So for instance, we can look at this preview, we can look at grabbing the existing item, adding to the quantity. There are other things we can do here to direct this particular behavior. This didn't work out exactly like I was expecting it to this time around, but it's not really difficult to deal with this. We can cancel it out and we can start all over again. But at this point, again, I'll run through it one more time and you'll see that it will suggest breakpoints, it will set breakpoints, it will watch for values, and then suggest code fixes for us. Once we get here again, a little bit more specific, exact line numbers, exact values, the debugging is started, and it will tell us to continue debugging again. In this case,
what I really like about this, John, is the sort of like conversational approach of this, and the fact that you could perhaps be put into a brand new repo that you have no idea about, and your change is breaking a ton of things. And something like this would be tremendously valuable there.
Yeah, it's especially helpful for that. And in this case, you can see, again, it's recommending, you showed the preview before. We can look at the fact, we can preview the code, we can accept the code, we can go rerun this test, all these sorts of things. But yeah, we do a lot of work in the background here to actually even take into consideration things like code changes that are present in your branch. So we can kind of figure out, well, based on test history, when did it last pass? When did it start failing? What are the changes we've seen? Those types of things will come into play in this as well, and you'll see that even in the explain test failure. So,
awesome.
Yeah, at this point, I applied that. We can run it. We should expect to see it turn green. The really cool thing about that is it does clean up after itself. It will set breakpoints, remove breakpoints, and keep going.
Hey, that's amazing. Thanks, John, and thanks for hopping on a call all the way from the East Coast.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks.
Okay.
Awesome. So that's pretty amazing that it's gone through it. It was kind of Copilot doing that debugging session for us, like picking where the breakpoints should go, identifying what the issues are, like telling you to step through to the next thing because it hasn't found what it needed and so on, and then suggesting a fix at the end, which is just taking that up that extra level. Right?
Yeah, no rubber duck debugging anymore, huh?
Yeah.
Copilot debugging.
Copilot debugging. So we had like the completions. We had completions blending with chat. So to help you with that code. We had it explaining things like the history that's gone on in your team. We even have it helping us debug. Mm-hmm. But like I said before, like not all of our time as devs is spent writing code and debugging code. About 3/4 of the time is spent doing things like gathering requirements and building specifications and trying to understand the code that exists. I don't know about the people here, but I quite often will jump between different projects inside my organization and working on open source projects as well. Like, how do you get up to speed with those projects as well? So I want to show you a couple of other places where GitHub Copilot has popped up lately, and some of the advancements we're making there as well. So for those of you who don't know, recently we added GitHub Copilot to GitHub.com. So if you have the right license, you can now chat with Copilot right inside GitHub.com in the browser. This is actually the same repo that you were looking at as well.
Yeah, and that's John.
And that's John. We've indexed this as well, so Copilot actually has a semantic knowledge of what the code actually does. So you could say things like, you could ask questions about that repository, but I'm going to say, what version of .NET does this project use? There's actually multiple projects, so that question doesn't really make sense. But we're asking, and it's having a look for .NET versions, and it says it's .NET Core 6. The workflow file set up with 7, and then you should also check the CS_proj file. So it's looked at what's in those files, and it's given an answer. But that's looking at this code. We've also got the ability to use skills like being able to search across the web. So what's the current or latest version of .NET. And this is a recency thing. Like, this is needing to look at what's on the internet to find out what the correct answer.
Yeah, I mean, and usually I think people often wonder, hey, your model got trained at a certain point in time.
Yeah.
What about all the stuff that came out after that?
Yeah.
And something like this is so useful, right? So knowing that Copilot can pull current information and augment that is brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And the models we use under the covers are generally GPT-4 based for chat, I think, so
Yep.
for Turbo. And that has a training cutoff date. And yes, we do make sure that the data in those models is updated, just like OpenAI does. We're using the same models, we're just using them inside our own infrastructure. But if something got released yesterday, we're not going to know that until they do that update. So we use skills like this to be able to search the web for the correct answer, right? So we could ask things like, when did this product go GA or something like that. So that's all cool. We can ask chat about these things. I'm going to show you another thing which is not working. I'm going to show you another thing which is this product here. I'm just going to spin up that. No, I won't. Whatever. So you might have seen this in the keynote for, this was Scott Guthrie's keynote? No, it was Satya's keynote Monday. Who was at that keynote? Yeah, it was pretty cool. This was the introduction to Copilot Workspace, which is kind of an AI-first developer tool. And the idea is that it's not replacing the developer, it's providing extra tools for the other 75% of the work that you need to do. So when you're given a task like this, update the product page to make the description a rich text field. So right now it's just a plain text in this description. Like what you'd normally do, you'd assign it to yourself. You'd go searching through the code base to find out exactly what needs to change. In some cases, you might need to hunt down the people who know that part of the code and the implications of changing that part of the code and who wrote the tests and whether the tests are going to pass. What Workspace does is it kind of allows you to get started on that with the help of AI. So I'm going to open this issue in a Workspace. And what will happen, this is live by the way, so when we did the Satya one, and there's always the temptation when people see keynotes of saying, well, this is obviously fake and it's a video and it's not real. This is the real one. I'm going to do it live. And so what it's done is it's used the information in that issue, that whole description of what's going on in that issue, and it's used that information along with its knowledge of the entire code base. And yes, this is demo code, but you can imagine in an enterprise, there might be thousands of files, millions of lines of code. So it's identified what needs to change. It's given us the current state of what's happening, and then it's given us a proposal of what needs to change approximately across that code base to meet this goal of what you've got. This is all editable too, so I can make changes to say things like, I don't know, make sure you use the snow theme or something like that. I don't know why I put a question mark on the end of that, but anyway. So you can change that, you can adjust the proposal. When you're ready, you can ask it to generate a plan. And a plan's a bit more of a detailed view of these are the files that need to change and how they need to change. So it's found the product description JSX file. It's found package.json to make sure it's there. And you can do things like, say, I want to add that information to the README file. So modify the README file and say, add documentation about Quill, which is it looks like it's using Quill for the implementation, which is cool. When I'm ready, I can ask it to implement. And it goes and it writes the code that meets the issue, the thing you've asked for, along with the specification and the plan. So you can think of this a bit like an agent kind of model. You can see it actually writing code there, which is quite cool. It's a bit like the agent model where each one of those stages is knowledgeable about how to put together a specification or how to put together a plan. So we're not just blindly throwing stuff at a large language model and saying, can you just implement this thing? Each of these stages, which kind of mirror the way that we work as developers, is making sure that we're tuning it so it does the best result of that specific task. They did a lot of experimentation around this, and they found that following the way that developers tend to work actually gives really good results. So good job, all of us. We do it the right way.
We're good models.
We're good models. And then, of course, it's generated all this code. I'm just going to have a quick look over it. Looks fine. It's even added like rich text formatting with Quill, and it's given us a description of what it's done. This looks pretty good to me. It's done imports. OK, let's see what's going on. Now, what you can do here as well is open a terminal. And this is being a little bit slow for me over Wi-Fi, I think. But what happens is it actually spins up a code space underneath. So you have compute, which means you can do things like debug. You can edit in a kind of a richer browser, a richer editor as well. When it's created that code space, which it's spending time on, you can spin up the application and do the live preview as well. There's a few other views you can have, so you can actually look through what's actually changed. So if we looked at that, I think it's in components, product description, you can see the diffs in there as well. So you can go through the rest of the file tree and find out exactly what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, this is super powerful because what you showed is you demonstrated going from perhaps an issue or a task to getting sort of a rough idea of what needs to be done, which is modeled after developers, and then a specific plan that is based on an agent model, and then actually generating code for that, being able to review that, and then pushing those changes if required, and that's brilliant.
Yeah, and we're not assuming that it's going to get the code right every time, which is why you're in control here. They're experimenting with a bunch of stuff as well. Actually, it's just spun up. Experimenting with a bunch of stuff as well, because this is still in technical preview. You have to join the waitlist, where you can do things like really important stuff, like making sure you can use emojis in the topics. But also, there's stuff around clarifying ambiguous specifications. So if it doesn't quite understand what you mean, it might actually ask you to clarify. So they're experimenting with a lot of these things as well. Just to show you, npm install, just to get this running. And then let's do an npm run dev. I told you I didn't write heaps of .NET, so npm run dev, it's going to run that. And let's try a live preview. This is very live.
So it's actual real code.
It's actual real code. I'm zooming in a little bit. Here's the Contoso admin site. Oop, there we go.
Nice.
And if we add a new product, there we go. We've got rich text. So rich, and then you can make it bold and change the fonts and stuff like that. So that was just from the description, right?
Yeah.
And it went all the way through.
Well, that's brilliant. And what I think is really cool is that there's a lot of innovation happening on the model, and like you showed us how the GitHub model actually enhances the VS experience. But even on GitHub.com, the advantage of like having sort of your DevOps over there, having those issues and having the relevant repository knowledge helps you sort of launch any kind of work that you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And what I wanted to actually harken back to was if we go back to VS now, which is, a bunch of the things that you're showing, we are going to continue pulling back into Visual Studio. So you talked at the very beginning on GitHub.com about like, hey, what version of .NET is the latest? Now, if I wanted to ask that GitHub.com, the intelligent GitHub.com that it is, I could also do that from within VS, right? So I have a GitHub agent over here, and that can actually give me some relevant information that's current, that's perhaps breaking that like time capsule problem. So I can say, hey, what is the latest version of .NET? And it should actually do something very similar to what happened on GitHub.com. And you can imagine that we're going to keep pulling information that is available over there into VS. So it was able to tell me .NET 8, right? And this wasn't something that was happening before, but we're super excited with the implications of that, bringing the org information locally and seeing what it does.
Awesome. So the point, I guess, is that Copilot's this broad capability of being able to chat, write code for you, help you like ideate, like figure out how to get the result. And it's showing up in all of these different places. We're continually kind of innovating on where it belongs and where it's going to help you the most, which is, And, I'm going to go back and actually maybe commit these changes. And, they were great changes. And, Copilot can help me over there as well. It's going to be able to generate a commit message for me. It may take a little bit of a second to do that, but, always a productivity boost when I have to write less. And, it was able to, suggest a great little description, and, I can insert this, and we are good to go. And it's comprehensive too. It looks at all the files. I don't know how many times I've looked at a change request, or not a change request, a pull request, and it said, hey, I changed this file to do this, and you have a look, and there's 6 more files that have changed too, but the person didn't write that in the description.
Well, thank you for joining us for this talk, and we're super excited to have shown you all the latest and greatest features.
A couple of things that we need you to know before we stop is for Copilot Workspace, that last thing I showed you, join the waitlist. That's the only way you're going to be able to get access to it at the moment. It is in technical preview. There's a few other things, right?
Yes, and highly encourage you to go and get the latest bits of Visual Studio. You'll have the inbox experience and Copilot will be at your fingertips. But if you want to try some of the cool new things that we demonstrated, always be on our previews. We encourage you to try 7011 preview. Yeah, I think the next thing, we're also going to be doing some more talks tomorrow where there's going to be a demo session where we're going to show you some new approaches, especially on how we improve the quality of our responses in Copilot. And also, we have some great content offline for where you can check behind the scenes of how we build these features with our development team. So go check all of those things out.
And then, yeah, final session resources. But we will be sticking around for another couple of minutes if you have other questions about that. Make sure you check out all of the other Copilot sessions and come and visit us at the Copilot booth and the Visual Studio booths up in level 5 tomorrow, because you should probably go now because it's the end of the day. Cool.
Thank
you
you
so much.